Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the impacts that a number of towns are likely to experience as Brexit causes their dependent employers to shut up shop. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news in politics, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, to begin with, I'll just say that this exercise would apply in any situation where the major employer that a town relies upon shuts down. It makes no difference whether it's due to Brexit, some other geopolitical change, or indeed any factor at all. Quite frankly, the effects are always the same. This is why Brexit makes this particularly important. It's because it's purely in terms of scale. The sheer numbers of major employers that have already announced closures linked to Brexit is unprecedented in British history. And we haven't even gone through the no-deal Brexit process yet, or even confirmed that it is definitely happening. This makes it more destructive than when your town's major industry is collapsing, which is always damaging enough. We can see that from the 1980s. This is because it's less easy to even move and find work elsewhere. Because if one major employer goes down, it can badly affect that town. I'm going to discuss how in a moment. But if it's happening in other towns in the region as well, it makes it much more difficult for even the individual worker to re-find work, so to speak. And you are competing against thousands of others potentially. And you know, this could be happening in towns in your region. And a recent report was looking at Bridgend, particularly in Wales, which is famous for having the Ford car factory, which has closed down. And it will be instructive into how other towns are going to have to face up to these realities when you look at the fears, particularly of the local council. Now, Ford at Bridgend is not necessarily even as damaging in itself as it could be. The GMB union, for example, has described the redundancy and pensions package for the workers losing their jobs as generous. This is surely not going to be true of all employers doing the same thing. But the closure of the plant there means nearly 2,000 well-paid jobs disappearing. And that is the emphasis as well. It's not just quite a lot of jobs, well-paid jobs. Meaning when you look at the proportion of people in that local community who are losing their jobs, the proportion of the income is higher. A small proportion of the overall population, but knock-on effects. Now, these wages sustain households of more people. So straight away, the number affected is significantly greater than simply the number of workers that are losing their jobs. The loss of the factory will also mean the loss of lorries and other transport coming into the town to do business with it. And of course, those lorry drivers and other workers spending money in cafes, petrol stations, other businesses. So those businesses will make less money and potentially dip below their profit margins, resulting in more job losses, potentially even business closures. The workers themselves will not be spending as much in their local community. The first thing that will be hit are things that might be considered luxury. So in Bridgend, for example, they're talking about things like salons and restaurants. That hits even more businesses, which will have to let even more staff go or even close themselves if they're a small business or for whatever other reason their profit margins are quite small, as they famously are in most restaurants, for example. And if they can't absorb the loss of customers, under they go. And that adds to the unemployment tally. There are already empty business premises in Bridgend on the high street. Current businesses closing down will make that high street look even more desolate. And that means fewer people will go onto that high street, which means that the fewer remaining businesses will get less footfall and fewer customers just going to another one, popping in to have a look and buy something maybe. That means that their profits will be squeezed, and although they may have been doing okay up until that point, some of those will then inevitably fail as that lower footfall means lower custom. And the pattern has been seen before. As I say, it's not a sequence of events that only follows Brexit-affected businesses. It would happen whenever a town which depends on a large employer that is not taken over, when it wishes to sell up, that is, suddenly goes through, due to whatever factors. In the case of Bridgend, there's a little bit of a safety net, you could argue, in that there's a new factory opening, but it is only going to employ a small fraction of the staff being lost to the Ford closure. So although some of them will find work at the new plant, massive amount of competition for it, and most of them are not going to. And also it's going to take a little while to get started up, so that peripheral business that comes into the town to deal with it won't happen for a while. So, and again, those smaller businesses that would rely upon it can't wait around for it to happen. They will go under before it does. My own current town of Scunthorpe, where I'm currently living at the moment, depends on the steelworks, which have thankfully just been bought. So, you know, one employer wanted to sell up. There has now been a buyer after many months found for it, but it's still going to mean the loss of hundreds of jobs. Added on to the thousands that have been lost there over the years, the effect is noticeable in this town. And then there are the business rates. So as well as the domino effect of, you know, wages not being spent in that business, so that business goes under, then that means more people unemployed and so on. You get that snowballing effect. These employers also pay business rates to the local council. So that means the local council now have less money for public services. So public services are cut. That means that the town is much less appealing for the people living there, encouraging people that can do to move away. There's also an opportunities cost that often gets overlooked. You never really see this in reports, but as a teacher of over 20 years, I am quite keenly aware of. So when you work in a town with a major industry, and I've worked in schools where there is a major industry and where there is not, and where there is not, it's always a lot more difficult to inspire the kids with maybe lower aspirations. Yeah, you've always got the higher aspirational kids who want to go off and be doctors and you know, and things like this. But then you've got the ones who really need to take their inspiration from the local community or even their own parents. If their own parents are not working, it's really difficult to inspire a lot of these kids. And without the focus of a career, students are much less motivated on their own studies. I mean, it stands to reason. Why would you spend a lot of time doing something quite difficult when you don't really see what your benefit is going to be at the end of it? I mean, that would be the case for an adult, really, wouldn't it? And if good careers are not to be found in your local area, then there are going to be a lot of young people who will struggle to get a career aim and therefore that motivation in time to make the best of their education. They end up coasting because I don't really know what I want to do, and come away with a random collection of depressed qualifications in the sense that not as high grades as they could have got, which then lowers the skill set in the local population still further. It can also hit colleges the way colleges work. If they struggle to forge links with suitable employers to deliver programs needed for the local economy, you know, when you have a strong manufacturing sector, the local colleges are delivering courses that build up the skills of the local teenagers who then leave to work in those plants with the suitable skill set and pursue well-paid careers. And it makes it more attractive for similar businesses to come into the area because those skills exist there. This is why I sometimes use the example in Formula One. There's in Oxford, a lot of Formula One teams are based there because the skills are in that local area, and it's a good place for them to set up. Not having that makes it harder to attract new investment, because who wants to come and build up a manufacturing plant in a town with a low skill set? And it would take some years to build it up to what they require. The bottom line is that everything feeds into everything else. A community is a very complex, interdependent organism, really, which means that damage to one part of it, like the closure of a plant, which looks like it represents job losses to just a few percent of the population, how can that have a major effect, can turn an area into a ghost town. And again, we've seen this before. This isn't speculation. This isn't just thinking logically through a sequence. We've seen it before because there are things other than Brexit that have caused these things to happen in the past. It's just, as I say, with Brexit, it's going to be happening it already has happened on an unprecedented scale. And when we go through the no deal Brexit, or at least when it is confirmed, surely it's going to ramp up still further. And the effect really does then begin to snowball. Like I say, you can't even have people easily move out, which wouldn't help the town, and find work elsewhere. Oh, and while we're on the subject, just to finish off, some of you may be asking, so did Bridgend, this place that has been badly hit by Brexit, did it vote for Brexit in the referendum? And has it just voted for the Conservatives in the most recent general election? You bet your arse it did. But that doesn't make it all right for those who did not and who will still be suffering alongside those who did. So I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, then please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.